Warning, the following podcast is auditory simulation that your ears desperately need. Please stay tuned.
Shut up and sit down.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is episode number 26 of the Baseball and Beer Podcast, featuring football. I am your host, Brendan Bowes, and for the next 25 minutes to a half hour, you'll be on my journey as we lay something down and discuss top news, whatever we can, Jesus Christ, whatever we can on of course, baseball, beer, and possibly football. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in and taking the time to listen to my podcast. So if you haven't figured it out by now, the first couple of minutes of this podcast is me just going over the basics of myself and the podcast, doing a little bit of house cleaning. If you ever want to get in touch with me, there are the following ways to do so. On Facebook, facebook.com/baseballbeerpod, post pictures, updates, and that sort of thing on baseball and beer. Trying to do football, but sometimes I get a little too hectic for that since it's only one day during the week. If you're on Twitter, I am also on Twitter, and my handle there is Baseball Beer Pod, same thing with the little @. So fully it's @BaseballBeerPod. If you want to send me an email, it is baseballbeerpodcast@gmail.com. And finally, if you want to go to the website in which you can find the podcast as they are put up, so you can get them before you can subscribe, or get them before iTunes and or Stitcher does. P.S. You can subscribe to me on iTunes and or Stitcher. But the website is baseballandbeerpodcast.blogspot.com. Again, it is different from the email address. Website has baseballandbeerpodcast.blogspot.com. Email address is just baseballbeerpodcast. So this weekend's Halloween. I hope everyone has a good time. Everyone remember to stay safe. Keep those samurai swords away from the candy so you don't get mixed up and accidentally put the sword into some little kid's basket. But I originally wanted to be Arrow for Halloween, if you couldn't have figured that out. But finding anything resembling his costume is way too expensive, so kind of bailed on that. But I did find something that's somewhat entertaining. Hopefully I could pick up one or two more accessories for the weekend, but it should be fun, I guess. I'm not going to get any candy, but, I'm an adult. My candy is going to be the beer that I drink, probably the homebrewed stuff. So, we got that. So, again, everyone have a good weekend. Be your favorite baseball player, football player. I don't know how you could be your favorite beer, because that's just you're putting a can on your head or something. I don't know. But regardless, have fun, enjoy it, be safe.
Beer is good, beer is good, beer is good, and stop.
So the one thing about this podcast that I like, because it's my own podcast, I guess really outside of the fact that it's my own podcast, is that I don't have a set schedule per se. I mean, I like to get this out on Wednesday. As you can tell, over the last couple of weeks, it's been a little bit tough. There's a good reason for that, but it's nothing I can really speak of right now. But, date, time, I just record whenever I feel like it. That's the benefit of not having this an actual job, even though that would be awesome. But with that said, I'd rather not get into the time I'm currently recording this. But, I mean, really, if you gather that it takes about an hour and a half for me to get motivated enough to do all the post-production stuff and post it online. Whenever you get this, you can, probably judge an hour, 2 hours before is when I'm recording. So the reason why I'm setting it up like this is because I want to go back to something that I haven't done in a while. Kind of in a holding pattern when it comes to home brewing and trying new beer and that sort of thing. Nothing really went on in terms of that this past week, so don't really have a whole lot to go over. So figured, why not bring this back? So here we go. Hopefully you can hear this. Yep, that is a beer that I am opening, and I am going to do a live tasting once again. So if you remember last week, I said that I took a little trip down to Monson, Massachusetts, visiting Treehouse Brewery, grabbed a whole bunch of cans there. Didn't drink them all over the weekend like I originally thought was going to happen, but I guess that benefits you guys because we get this now. So I still have Julius left, and I think I might do that after I taste test this, just because I'm weird. But I grabbed Eureka with Citra hops, because Eureka is just one of those beers that they have that they don't really brew it the same every time. They use different hops, every other batch, or they make different batches using different hops. First time I had it, it was Eureka with Galaxy hops, which gave it a more bitter floral taste, which was fine. This one, though, is Citra hops, and after I had this the first time, I kind of realized that and I think I said this before, but my deal with IPAs is that I don't like the piney, floral, bitter hops that go into IPAs. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but IPAs that use Citra tend to be my wheelhouse. Those are the ones I like. I prefer a little bit of citrus, a little bit of quote-unquote fruit taste to my IPA. I never would have thought that myself, but that's what it's boiled down to. So here we go, Eureka with Citra from Treehouse. I'm going to pour it into its glass. It's a very light-colored beer. Well, it's a blonde ale, so obviously it has the blonde texture to it, both color. And you can smell the hops immediately. They're really popping out. Got a lot of foam in here. When I grabbed the beer, it was laying sideways, so that may not have been the best sign. But it didn't explode when I opened it, which is a plus. But on the downside, I have probably about 3 fingers worth of foam sitting in the mug right now. But yeah, it's a blonde ale. It's interesting because just looking at the beer through the glass, like the perimeter of the beer is very light, but it becomes more of a dark amber color as you get closer to the center. Again, it smells really fantastic. Citra hops have a bit of pine to them, but not over. What's the word I'm looking for? Not overstimulating, I guess, is the best way to phrase it. I'm still trying to waste time while the foam settles. What else can I say about this? But I mean, it's a blonde ale, so it's mashed, boiled, and the hops are just thrown in during the boil, I would imagine. But it's still foamy like a motherfucker. All right, I'm going to give this a couple of seconds here. All right, so as the foam is still working its way down, one of the good things I like about Treehouse is that their cans are a bit bigger than your traditional beer cans. This one, Eureka is a full pint. I know Julius is a full pint. The ABV on Eureka with Citra is 4.1, so it's very light, but that's a given with a blonde ale. It's a very more summery type beverage, but it's certainly one of the better ones out there. But again, for me, it's just with Citra. Galaxy is fine. I don't know if they made Simcoe or Amarillo or any of the other hops yet. Pretty sure they have, but never picked them up. But still trying to waste time. The foam is definitely going down. It's almost drinkable now. The lacing lacing's not heavy. Well, yeah, it is a bit heavy. The further it's gone down, the heavier it gets. But, that's a sign of a good beer. I'm going to give it a couple more seconds here. All right, I think we're finally in a good spot. So, I got my pint glass. It's still light in the outside, dark in the middle. And here we go. Yep, that's a blonde ale. It's very sweet right off the bat, and that's even before the hops kick in. I could taste the pininess of the Citra. It's not overwhelming, which is great, and I could still feel the punch of the citrus parts of the Citra. So it gets a little bit more of a boost in terms of the citrus flavor. So it's both sweet, citrus, and a little bitter for those who like a little bit of bitterness. So let me try another sip here. Yeah, it's still the same. Doesn't lose flavor as everything gets aired out. So that's always a positive. Again, this is Eureka with Citra hops and from Treehouse. 4.1 ABV, and it is a quality beer. Quality blonde ale. The sweetness is really balanced. It's not overwhelmingly sweet. And I think that's due to the hops, really. I mean, the bitterness and the citrus kind of kick the sweetness down. So it's not overwhelming. Nothing in this is overwhelming. It's all well balanced, as they say. All right, so I'm about halfway through the can at this point. It's still balanced. The sweetness is being kicked up just a little bit at this point. Really starting to lose the pininess of the hops. So that kind of explains that. Otherwise, it's still tasty. And the balance is a little swayed, but it's nothing drastic. Still loving it, so there we stand right now. All right, so as most blonde ales do, towards the end of the beer, it started to get really bland. Bland. The hops, the hops kind of stuck through, but the sweetness pretty much went away by the time I got to the end of it, which was interesting. Not something I was really expecting. And it seems weird because I've had this beer many times over the last week, but, here and now I actually get to analyze it rather than just enjoy it. So, thinking about it critically, that's when I notice that, it becomes bland and the sweetness goes away and the hops still kind of stick through towards the end, again, which is interesting. Wasn't expecting that. But overall, it's a phenomenal beer, phenomenal blonde ale. I obviously like it better than the Eureka with Galaxy. But that's nothing wrong against Galaxy. It's just my personal preference because, like I described before, Citra hops are the only ones I can really tolerate. At least when the point of the hops are to have the flavor stick out, if that makes sense. But I'm going to be right back, and we're going to try this again with a different beer. All right, so I was quickly looking at beeradvocate.com because I remember a few weeks ago, maybe further back than that, but Julius there was like the number 1 or 2 beer, maybe possibly within the top 5. Right now it's number 11, which was kind of surprising for me, but in another sense was interesting because Good Morning, Treehouse's coffee stout was number 1, and I have to agree with that. I prefer, obviously, I'm going to prefer a stout over an IPA, but Good Morning is delicious. It is fantastic. It is, it's just one of those things where I could just repeat words that, are synonymous with excellent for an hour, and I would be on the same page. But, going back to what we have on hand, they don't can Good Morning. They only put it in growlers, which is fine. When I went there, they weren't growlering anything, which sucked. So until then, we have to deal with this. This is Julius, the flagship IPA of Treehouse, the one that got them on the map. This is an IPA, which is the front. 6.8 is the ABV, and it is your traditional IPA. Alright, so here we go, pouring it. This is much more of a dark color. Well, darker than Blonde Ale. Not by much, but it still has the orange auburn tint to it. In the glass, it is much darker. Much darker. I can't see through the glass, which I could do with the Eureka. But this one is very darker, still auburn color for an IPA. Still getting 3 fingers worth of foam. So, as you know, at this point, it's time to let it settle. The smell is, obviously, for an IPA, as an IPA, it's hoppy, but pleasant. Pleasant hoppy, pleasant for me, anyway. Feels like there's Citra in here. I really have no idea which hops are used. And does it say? Because I feel like it would be Citra, just because of what it smells like. Yeah, it's bright tropical beer filled with flavors and aromas of peach, mango, and passion fruit, and emulsions of citrus. So that kind of feels like it's Citra. So IPA with Citra makes sense that I like it, but let's taste it in front of the microphone just so we can all relish in the fact that I do like it, and I'm not trying to yank your chain. So, again, it smells hoppy, but Citra hoppy, so it's very pleasant to me. Bit of citrus to it. All right, bottoms up. It's an IPA. Tastes a little bit heavier than Eureka, but that's a given. It's definitely Citra. The taste is very similar to the bittersweet taste I had with Eureka. But in IPA form, it's if you've had Heady Topper, you know what I'm talking about. It's probably the best way to describe it. It seems like it's a bit more. Heady Topper is a bit citrusy than this, but I think this has more balance to it. It's a more solid taste to it. But yeah, I would liken it with Heady Topper just in terms of what the both IPAs that taste more like a solid beer that I appreciate. So we'll try it again. Yeah, still tastes the same. Getting a bit hoppier as you get further down, which is fine. I still like it. Still got the Citra taste. There's definitely tasting the mango and peach. It's very pleasant. It's not overwhelming, but it's definitely pleasant. Something that I wish I could try in other beers. Just the hint of peach and mango, not the overwhelming flavor of it, but this is very solid, very justified and worthy of its number 11th spot. Alright, so I guess the bottom line is that I love Julius. Just finished it, and I have one more can left in my fridge, and because it's an IPA, it really needs to be drank needs to be had as soon as possible while it's still fresh. So, who knows? I think I might just bring it down for Halloween. Part of the costume. But yeah, that was Eureka and Julius from Treehouse, 2 top quality beers. And I just want to thank Treehouse for being there and being relatively close so that when they announce Can's release, it noon, I can head over there and grab some. So thanks, guys. You're the best.
Block kick. And everybody blames me. But it was the left guard who didn't back up his man.
All right, so in the NFL, the Raiders won. They beat the Chargers pretty senseless. If you look at the score, they won by 8 points, but the game was a lot further away than that score. Raiders were up, I think, like 37-3 going into the fourth quarter, and Jack Del Rio just played prevent defense, which the only thing it prevents is you from defending anything. But the Raiders were on fire. Derek Carr continues to show improvement. Amari Cooper shows that he is going to be at least one of the top two of NFL Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year. It's just crazy how good this team is looking. And it scares me to say that because over the last 12 years, it's just been nothing but disappointment. But we finally have a quarterback that can quarterback, finally have a wide receiver who's top notch. Michael Crabtree was a great signing. He's actually doing exactly what I thought, just taking the catches when Amari Cooper can't be thrown at for whatever reason. Still, there's a bit of disappointment in the running game. Latavius Murray was supposed to be really good, and he hasn't been bad, but he hasn't lived up to expectations. But that's probably our fault as fans. Still a good offensive team. Still need to work on defense. That's going to be our downfall. I hope this team. I mean, obviously, I want this team to succeed as much as possible. Kind of hoping they don't make the playoffs because they're going to get embarrassed by whoever they play in the wild card. But speaking of the Chargers, I feel bad for their fans. Not only did they get destroyed by the Raiders, turns out that they are one step closer to moving to Los Angeles. Offhand, I don't know how far Los Angeles away from San Diego. I would say maybe a couple of hours, but still, San Diego. The Chargers have always been in San Diego. You wouldn't expect San Diego to be a popular spot for a major league sports team, but here we are. Chargers haven't won a Super Bowl there, but they've always been popular. They've had their run of top-notch players like LaDainian Tomlinson and Junior Seau, amongst others. And their powder blue uniforms are just awesome to see whenever they whip those out. Kind of feel bad for them. It may be best in the long run, but it's not good news for when you're a fan of a local team and they're just picking up and moving. Believe me, I was a Hartford Whalers guy. And for those of you who don't know who the Hartford Whalers are, they are now the Carolina Hurricanes? I think that's right. Hockey's not my thing. But yeah, that sucks for the Chargers. Let's see what's going on. Let's see what the games are this week. Thursday night's game is going to be tonight's game is going to be a doozy. Patriots are heading down to Miami to play the Dolphins. Dolphins are coming up here to Foxborough to play the Patriots. So Patriots are still undefeated. They won last week against the Jets, who are playing the Raiders this week, but I'll get into that later. Patriots are still undefeated, 6-0. They don't show any signs of slowing down either. Again, like I've said before, Brady's on a mission to prove that he gives no shits about any deflating of balls and any trouble that may have caused. He's a fantastic quarterback, regardless of what PSI the footballs are, and that's his mission this year. And again, as long as he doesn't face the Raiders, I'm all for it. It's funny to watch, funny to plow over every team out there. Dolphins had a fantastic week last week. They put up 42 points, I think, in the first half. Lamar Miller had, I think he was at 100 hey, I topped 100 yards and already had 2 touchdowns by the time the first half ended. So he could possibly be the real deal. This should be a solid game all around. Ryan Tannehill is a solid quarterback. He has a couple of good weapons. Jarvis Landry is the quarterback. Who is his top receiver? He also has Rashard Matthews, who I have on fantasy. Humble brag. Give me stats. Roster depth. All right, let's go depth chart. All right, so the receiver that Tannehill throws at a lot is... Yeah, okay, I was right, Jarvis Landry. But it looks like Rashard Matthews is now WR1, which is interesting. Bottom line is that Dolphins have a solid team. It should be... I want to say it should be a good game on paper, but... the Patriots could just very well decide, say, hey, fuck you, Miami, we're going to trample you like we did everywhere else. So we'll see what happens. Other games this week include, like I said before, the Raiders are playing the Jets. New York is doing well in their first season without Rex Ryan. They're 4-2, second place in the AFC East. Raiders are 3-3. Also second place in the AFC West, so it should be interesting here. It's not much to say about the Jets. Ryan Fitzpatrick is playing better than expected after Geno Smith got clocked in the grill preseason by his own teammate. Chris Ivory is becoming a solid running back as well. And the Jets got Brandon Marshall in the offseason, so they're a pretty solid team themselves. Hopefully the Raiders' defense tightens themselves up and really goes all out and decides to play defense so they can win. All right, so the London game is Lions versus Chiefs, which sounds awful. I hate to be so blunt like that, but Jesus, neither of those teams are doing well. And if you want to wake up at 9:30 to watch those teams play, more power to you. I mean, I'm probably going to be up just because, but, whatever. The only game outside of those that's really worth mentioning is the Sunday night game, Packers at Broncos. Both teams are undefeated at 6-0. Packers are doing extremely well. Broncos are usually getting by the skin of their teeth. Manning has not been the Peyton Manning that we all know and love. So it's going to be interesting to see how these two teams, hold up and see which one actually stays undefeated. Outside of that, Panthers are the only other undefeated team, and the Bengals, I don't know who the Bengals are playing, but as I was going through the games, nothing else stuck out as worthy of talking about. So probably going to have a couple of teams that are still going to be 7-0 at this point. Not the best week in NFL, but what can you do? Not all of them can be perfect.
Single, double, triple, home run. For the celebration, I'll shoot my gun.
All right, finally, after 162 grueling games plus the playoffs, we finally have a World Series. Well, finally we'll have a World Series, a little bit misleading since Game 2 happened yesterday. But as I mentioned last week, the Mets had swept the Cubs in 4 games, and we were just waiting on the winner of the Royals and the Blue Jays to see who the Mets were playing. And as it turned out, those boys in Kansas City took the ALCS and are now representing the American League in the World Series. And between yesterday's game and Game 1, the Royals, I guess to summarize, the Royals are up 2-0 at this point. Game 1 was a 14-inning masterpiece that, as a fan of baseball, everyone should watch. I know I preach home runs and I preach advanced metrics, but in a World Series where every game counts, every play counts, small ball is not a bad idea, and you don't know how hard that is for me to say. So it was just small ball against small ball. It took 14 innings for small ball to win, but Alex Gordon, after botching an infield botching a play in the infield to allow the Mets to take the lead in like the 7th or 8th inning. Comes to the plate the 14th inning and brings his team the victory. So that's always good to see. Don't want a loss hanging on you for a play that you made or didn't make, rather. And then yesterday's game was just pure offensive domination over Jacob DeGrom. It's kind of sad because the Royals during Game 2 is exactly what I hoped the Blue Jays would do if they made it to the World Series against the Mets pitching. But they are traveling to New York as we speak. Game 3 is tomorrow. Game 4 is Saturday. Game 5 is probably Sunday. And then, these are all if necessary. And then they travel back to Kansas City for 6 and 7. So hopefully we continue to have good games. That's all we really ask for. Unless you're a Mets fan or a Royals fan, then you just hope for easy wins all the time so you can sit back and relax. All right, so the other big news that at least happened this morning, general manager for the Toronto Blue Jays, Alex, I'm going to botch his last name, Anthopoulos, has parted ways as general... Excuse me. That's not professional. They've parted ways... Let me try that again. Double A has parted ways with the Toronto Blue Jays. So he is no longer general manager. He's the guy who brought together the super team that just lost in the ALCS. So he was able to acquire Troy Tulowitzki, David Price. Why is my mind going blank? Josh Donaldson, R.A. Dickey, Mark Burley, amongst others, for trades and that sort of thing. Managed to put together that super team that defied odds and made it to the ALCS and knocked a bunch of home runs, which made me happy. So I bring this up because supposedly they are going to be targeting White Sox president of operations, Kenny Williams. Kenny is obviously he put together the World Series 2005 team, so it's not all that bad, but he has a weird point of view as for general manager. I think he'd be okay with this team that he'd be getting in Toronto. I don't think it would last very long, but he wouldn't break it down off the bat. But then again, he still needs to be signed there. That's certainly not going to happen. So who knows? The other big news is, two managers have been signed today. First, Don Mattingly, after being relieved from managing the Dodgers, is inked a deal with Florida Marlins. He's going from a team that has a bunch of bona fide superstars to a very young team that has an elite hitter, a great pitcher, and not a whole lot else that's been set in stone. So it'd be interesting to see. A lot of people consider Don Mattingly a good manager because of the team that he managed. So this is a good test for him to see if he's actually a good manager or if he's just a huge dum-dum. The other big signing is the Nationals have inked Bud Black to be the manager. Bud Black was the San Diego Padres manager for years. Their one World Series appearance in the year 2000, or in the 2000s, is based solely upon Bud Black. Outside of that, he hasn't really been successful with the team, so it'd be interesting what he's going to deal with a much better team on paper with the Nationals. So Nationals are looking to prove that this year was a fluke. They're actually a solid team. I tend to agree with that, but we'll see what happens. Well, that wraps up episode number 26 of the Baseball and Beer podcast. Again, if you ever want to reach out to me, I am about to list the following ways to do so. On Facebook, you can join the Facebook group, facebook.com/baseballbeerpod. If you want to find me on Twitter, it is at baseballbeerpod. If you want to send me an email, it is baseballbeerpodcast@gmail.com. And finally, if you want to go to the website, which I post the podcast first and foremost before you can find them on iTunes and or Stitcher. It is baseballandbeerpodcast.blogspot.com. Also, if you haven't picked that up yet, you can also subscribe to me and the Baseball and Beer podcast on both iTunes and Stitcher. So go ahead and find me. I'm the silly little pink penguin logo stuffed inside a Jeep. So find me. Again, thanks everyone for listening to episode number 26 of the Baseball and Beer podcast. I am Brendan Bose, and I hope everyone has a fabulous Halloween weekend.
Are you excited?
I'm so excited.
Awesome.
I do not like Julia Roberts movies.